Hey everybody, welcome to the Evening Reader. My name is Priscilla, and today I am going to do the um, Booker Dozen, the Booker Backlist, whatever we're calling it these days. I saw Charlotte Malloy do this, and I also saw Angelia at Reads and Rereads and Brian at Bookish do this video, and I thought that this looked like a fun one to do. Because since it just feels a little early to wrap things up, I think I can still squeeze in one more book. I did finish In Memoriam by Martin McInnes. In Ascension, excuse me, not In Memoriam. Maybe that's how I'm thinking of it, In Memoriam. No, I did finish In Ascension by Martin McInnes, so I will talk about that in my wrap-up video. And I am almost finished with Avid Reader, the memoir of Robert Gottlieb, the famous Knopf and editor. Also, he was editor of The New Yorker for like 8 years, I think. Yeah, so I finished those, and I'm thinking I can probably squeeze in one more book before the end of the month. So I'm gonna hold off on the wrap-up video. And so today I'm gonna do this Booker Dozen because it just seemed like a lot of fun. I don't think there are really any rules. I will link the other 3 videos down below. And if you also have done this, feel free to share. But yeah, I think it's just looking at the Booker long lists and looking at favorites that were there. And I have some winners and then also not some winners. I'm not going to read long descriptions of the books or go into any of that. It's going to kind of keep this as a short video. But I had a lot of fun going through these and finding but especially some of the backlist titles and things that I had even kind of forgotten that I had read. So yeah, I guess that's it. I guess I usually don't worry about like literary prizes and things, so it's always interesting to me to kind of go back and look at a prize list and see things that I've either missed or didn't realize I had won, or that were books that I really loved that had been contenders that I actually had no idea at all. So without further ado, you know me, I'll probably make more ado and then I'll keep saying without further ado. But no, really. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to do these in chronological order. They're not necessarily in order of favorites or anything like that, but just, yeah, I'm going straight through the years. So I'll start, I think the Booker started in the late 60s, but the first entry on my list is from 1973, and that is The Siege of Krishnapur by J.G. Farrell, which is just really sort of a scathing and hilarious look at British colonialism. And if you have not read it, it's just really fantastic. I read that a long ago and actually reviewed it on my blog, and I'll put the link to my original review of this book from my Evening Reader book blog. I think I read it back in, oh gosh, like I think 2010 or 2011, and it just was really wonderful. And I've wanted to read more J.G. Farrell, and I have his book The Troubles on my list, and that actually also, I believe, won a Booker. I think it won the Lost Booker Prize later in like 1975, I think it was. So yeah, so that's my first entry on the list, is The Siege of Krishnapur by J.G. Farrell. My second entry is from 1978, and that is Penelope Fitzgerald's The Bookshop. I think this was her first book, and I'm not sure if this was her first book or if it was her book about the BBC, and I can't remember the name of that off the top of my head. But this was a really particularly lovely little book about a woman who moves to a seaside town and takes over a bookshop. And Penelope Fitzgerald started her writing career sort of late in life. I believe she was in her late 60s or her 70s when she started writing fiction. So hope for those of us out there who are still maybe hoping to, make our marks or what have you. But yeah, The Bookshop by Penelope Fitzgerald is a really wonderful, short little read. I think I might reread it for Shorty September. It would definitely be a good one to put on your list if you're looking to participate in that event in September. My next entry is from 1990, and that is Possession by A.S. Byatt, which did win. The Siege of Krishnapur was a winner. The Bookshop was shortlisted, and now Possession by A.S. Byatt was also the winner in 1990. The first A.S. Byatt I ever read was The Children's Hour, and while I liked it and was really amazed at her just detailed and gorgeous writing, it didn't wow me, but I still always wanted to pick up Possession, which is the parallel story of two academics and two poets in different timelines. The academics who are studying the poets, and I hope I'm getting this right because I read this quite a while ago, and the poets whose lives they are studying, and it is just a fantastic, fantastic book. Absolutely gripping. Highly recommend it. The next one also was a shortlisted book, and I've already talked about it here on the channel because it's by one of my favorite authors, and that's Carol Shields, and that's her 1993 book, The Stone Diaries, which also won the Pulitzer Prize, as it was. This is the book of about Daisy Flett, and it is sort of a biography of this woman, Daisy Flett. And it's not told by one narrator or a biographer, or it's not an autobiography or a first person account, but it's an account of this woman's life from many different perspectives, told through letters, told through magazine articles, told by her, her daughter's memories. Just a really fascinating look at a life. Carol Shields was really interested in the art of biography, so this was one of her attempts. She did this in many of her novels, sort of looked at her subjects as more as biographical subjects, or how other people approach writing about other people. So yeah, biography or even fictional characters. Anyway, okay. Next up, and I think this one's probably going to be on a lot of people's lists, and I've heard a lot of people talking about this year. Seems like I think the Blind Eye Book Club read this book. I think some other people have been doing this one as a read along, and that it was shortlisted in 1996, and that is Rohinton Mysteries: A Fine Balance, which is just such an amazing and wonderful book. That's definitely something that's on my list to reread sometime in the near future. I've only read two of his books, this one and Family Matters, which also made the Booker shortlist later, I think like in 2000 or 2001. But I don't think I didn't put it on this list, but yeah, he's been up for the Booker at least twice. No, it was 2002. Oh, I have a note about it here. And yeah, so in 2002, that's actually my next one, which was also a shortlisted book, along with Family Matters by Rohinton Mystery, and that is Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. And this was one that surprised me. I did not, I was surprised that Fingersmith was on the Booker list. I don't know why, and I think it was only because I learned about Sarah Waters for a friend of mine in Atlanta who has been, or was, I don't know if she still is actually doing this, she was an editor for a sort of, I think, science fiction and fantasy journal that was mostly, I believe, gay and lesbian authors. It may have only been actually women. I can't remember for sure. But she had come across, and she knew the work of Sarah Waters and was always telling me, you like literary fiction, you should really read Sarah Waters. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I wasn't into historical fiction. I wasn't into any kind of, and Sarah Waters is obviously not really a fantasy or sci-fi writer, but she was really just always saying, you should read Sarah Waters, you should read Sarah Waters. And so I finally read Fingersmith, I think in 2009 or 2010, and I just absolutely loved it, and of course immediately started to try to read everything I could get my hands on by her. And I think Fingersmith and The Night Watch are probably my two favorites by her, and Angelia actually had picked The Night Watch on her list, and so I put Fingersmith on mine. And it is the story of a con artist in 19th century England, and it's quite the caper. And her writing is just always just so fantastic. So I highly recommend that one. Number 7 on my list is from 2003, and this was shortlisted, and I was surprised that this was on the list too. I don't know why I'm so surprised. I think sometimes I feel like when books that feel like they would be more popular and less literary and less sort of like, high culture. I don't know what you want. I don't know. I don't know. That's a ridiculous distinction, but there it is. But that is Notes on a Scandal by Zoe Heller. This was just, I remember just being absolutely riveted by this book of a school teacher who sort of becomes obsessed, if you will, with a fellow teacher and her husband and their lives. And it is just some of the most scathing and dark and witty and uncomfortable writing. It's just it's an amazing story. It was made into a movie, and I don't think the movie was called Notes on a Scandal, but it starred Judi Dench as the school teacher who sort of becomes really obsessed with this other woman. So I highly recommend that one if you haven't read it. It's quite the ride. It's laugh out loud, wickedly funny, but also just makes you squirm like crazy. Number 8 in 2005, shortlisted. This is an author that, while I admire her, I don't really get along with her writing. And this is my favorite of her books. And I would say it's probably the only book of hers that I really have truly enjoyed. And I've read, I think, maybe 3 or 4 of her books. And that is Zadie Smith. And this is her book on beauty, which is her sort of retelling of Howard's End, and using an African American academic family in the current American culture. And it's just a really, really wonderful book. And that I remember what I did was I read Howard's End, and then I read On Beauty, and was just really blown away by how she was able to make that story her own, and then also by her writing. And I wonder if, because the thing with me and Zadie Smith is, like, I just always feel like she's on the page with me, and I feel like I always say she's doing jazz hands. Like, look at me, here I'm writing, la la la, and I'm like, okay, we get it, stop fossying all over the place. But I do admire her writing. I don't like that when an author's on the page with me, but I think maybe because she was trying to channel Forster and trying to sort of adapt this story, that she tended to get less in the way of her writing. And so the writing shines instead of Zadie Smith shining, if that makes any sense. So yeah, just really wonderful. My next, number 9, I haven't been saying the numbers of these, but this is number 9 of my baker's dozen, is the book Skippy Dies by Paul Murray. And I think Paul Murray has a new book out this year. I believe it's called The Bee Sting. So I'm really looking forward to reading that, because Skippy Dies was just absolutely masterful. It was on the long list. This would be one. I have to go back and look and see what other books were on there, but I'm surprised that this wouldn't have won, because it's a complex book. It's such an interesting book, and it's basically about what it says. Skippy dies. It's about a student at an Irish school, a boys' school, and we learn about Skippy's death. It's told through multiple narratives, multiple points of view, from teachers and students, and sort of getting down to what happened to Skippy. And it's funny, it's heartfelt, it's just an interesting look, a slice of life and culture at the time. A really, really fantastic book. And it's a long book, but I think that I want to say that if you bought the hard copy, I have it on Kindle. I think if you bought the hard copy, that it came in more than one volume. I might be making that up. I'll have to look that up, but really fantastic and worth reading, and I'm looking forward to reading his new one. So number 10 on the list for me, this was shortlisted in 2011, just the following year, and that is The Sisters Brothers by Patrick DeWitt, which is probably one of my favorite Westerns. It was one that I considered reading for June on the Range, but I decided to reread Lonesome Dove instead, and I will never regret that decision. The Sisters Brothers is the story of two brothers who are basically outlaws, bandits, and one of whom sort of wants to get out of the life, and the other who's more ruthless and sort of wants to go forward. And it's the story basically of their last adventure, if you will, and it is hilarious. It is warm and just really funny. It was also a movie, and the movie was only, to me, okay. It was all right. If you saw the movie and you didn't read the book, you may really enjoy the movie, but the book just had a very special tone and sort of a sly humor to it that was just highly enjoyable. So I recommend, well, I guess I'll recommend all of these books since they're the ones I'm picking out. Number 11 was shortlisted in 2014. This is another one. I need to, it's, it's just like I wish I could put the whole list up for every, short list up for every year. This is such an unusual book. I've never read anything like it before or since, and it was one of those books that I was kind of reluctant to pick up because I don't tend to like books that involve animals. Partially because, there's just always the problem of something bad's going to happen to the animal, and I don't want to be there for that. But also, it just can, in the wrong hands, be tedious. It's sometimes like child narrators. I don't get on with those either. There are some books with child narrators that they're really well done, and I'm blown away by them. And I can't think of one off the top of my head at the moment, but I know they exist. But this doesn't have an animal narrator. It has a human narrator. But this book is We Are All Completely Beside Ourselves by Karen Joy Fowler, which I don't want to give it away if you haven't read it, but if you've read it, then you know the story. And it's such an unusual book about family and about love and devotion, and just the writing is absolutely beautiful. I'm really interested in reading her new book, Booth, which I guess has had kind of mixed reactions, but I read her book, The Jane Austen Book Club, and it's kind of amazing that those two books, The Jane Austen Book Club and We Are All Completely Beside Ourselves, came from the same author. But Jane Austen Book Club is a really cute book. If you're a Jane Austen fan, if you just like bookish books, books about people who love to read, it's really worth picking up. It's a very enjoyable book. But this we're all completely beside ourselves is a completely different kind of work. Just stunning. So yeah, all right, let's move on. This is already getting too long. Number 12 on my list is, this was shortlisted in 2017, and that is Elmet by Fiona Mosley, which was, I was really hoping that book would win. And it's the story of two children who grow up with a sort of ragtag amateur pugilist father in Yorkshire, and just very well done. Just a wonderfully told story. I probably should have looked up everything before I started doing this video so that I'd have better descriptions, but well, there you go. And my final choice, my number 13 on this baker's dozen, is Milkman by Anna Burns, which won the prize in 2018, which was just, I was absolutely blown away by that book. Stream of consciousness, story of the troubles in Northern Ireland, told from the point of view of a young woman who just sort of sees the world and sees the absurdity and is thinking about other ways to live. It's just a highly witty book. Kind of hard. I guess a lot of people have found it hard to get into. I didn't find it hard to get into once I picked up the rhythm. And it didn't take me too long. I would say maybe 30 pages to sort of get into that. But yeah, really wonderful. So there's everything. Wow. My not great descriptions, but let me know if you have read any of these or if you're planning to read or hope to read any of these. And if you don't have a channel and you want to share what you think some of your dozen would be or what some of your favorite Booker winners would have been, I would love to hear about it. And yeah, wow, I think this might be my shortest video ever if I can stop myself from, just continuing to ramble. But I think I just will. I think I'll just not ramble. Yeah. So let me know how you're doing. Let me know what's going on with you in the comments, how your month's going. And yeah, like I said, if any of these interest you or if any of these are some of your favorites. And I will talk to you later in the week. Okay, take care. Bye.